This episode is brought to you by the I Am a 5-Star Woman Retreat. Join us as women convene south of tropical Miami, Florida on October 6, 2018. In this one-day retreat from our surrounding worlds, ladies will congregate to enjoy all things Jamila Wellness, from uniting the women in the family with the Forever Brunch, to living our star lives, to building our resilience with Naturally Cinnamon. The attendees of these retreats will leave with tools to immediately apply to their lives. The menu, each section, and every activity have been delicately created to increase every aspect of wellness in women: mental wellness, emotional wellness, physical wellness, financial wellness, and yes, spiritual wellness too. Not only will you walk away with having developed each point of your star, you will be a 5-star woman. Register now at www.starshineconference.com and use promo code podcast to receive 10% off your ticket. Can't make it and want a live stream? There's an option for you too. www.starshineconference.com. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time of the day it is that you're tuning in. Welcome to another episode of the Resilience Rising Podcast with me, Naturally Cinnamon. I am a therapist, life coach, resilience cultivator, and the founder and CEO of Jamila Wellness, LLC, where women go to be well and live beautifully. You can find us at resiliencerisingpodcast.com. You can also send in your questions, topics, comments, and feedback at resiliencerisingpodcast@gmail.com. Like this, love this, share it, rate it, comment, but most important, make sure that you're subscribed and following. Here's another episode. Hope you enjoy. Hey everybody. I missed you guys. For those who don't know, actually none of you know. I know you guys missed me. Last week I didn't put a podcast out at all because you know what? It was a holiday week. I was resting and relaxing as much as I possibly could. And so I just figured, you know what? I've been going straight for 22 episodes. And when I first started the podcast, I thought, man, you know, maybe every other week I'll put one out. But I've gone for 22 weeks straight, and I am proud of myself and applauding myself, and I rewarded myself with a week off. So here we are, we're coming back. As you notice, you're not receiving this podcast episode on a Wednesday. No, you're not. You're not receiving this podcast on the episode on a Wednesday because I'm moving the release day of the week up into, I'm debating between Mondays and Tuesdays, but it's probably going to be Tuesdays. On the weeks when I do a Woman Law Wednesday topic, that week it'll be on Wednesday, but really, probably Monday or Tuesday. Probably going to shoot for Monday, and if it doesn't happen Monday, then it comes out Tuesday. But you guys will start to see episodes earlier in the week than midweek. So yeah, that's a change I decided to make. So as we come back, this episode is not being released on a Wednesday. It's coming out a little earlier. So, but also I missed you guys because I haven't recorded in a month. Right? I was able to pre-record all of my episodes and get them scheduled to go out to you throughout the month of June so that I could take some time off. So I hustled with the last week of May and the first week of June to get all of that recorded and edited and uploaded and scheduled and all of that stuff. And so now here I am. I'm back and I'm recording, and I missed you guys. So this episode, we're catching up. We're catching up with all the things that we've missed with each other, all the things that's going on, and we're going to just, talk about a couple of things. And then the next episode, we're going to get back into our format. So for any new listeners that I've gathered, I've noticed that my numbers have gone up. They've almost doubled. So I know I have some new followers and some new listeners. So I welcome all of you. Welcome to the Resilience Rising Podcast. Be sure if you're on Facebook to, join the Resilience Rising community. Follow the Resilience Rising podcast Facebook page. Yes, we have now a Facebook page where all of the podcast episodes can be located. But if you don't know where to find any of that stuff, just go to the website, resiliencerisingbpodcast.com, and there's links to direct you to all of that. So let's just jump in to our wins, L's, and I don't knows. For those just tuning in, wins, L's, and I don't knows is a segment where we hear from myself and other people who are tuned in who have sent us in a win that they've had so we can celebrate along with them. An L could be a loss or an L could be a lesson. We're going to hope to turn all losses into lessons, and that in itself, learning something, is indeed a win. So we're going to pat ourselves on the back. It's a way not to look down on things. It's a way to try to shift our perspective and look at things in a positive light. And the I don't knows is when something may have occurred in your life or in your week that just threw you completely off balance. And you're like, I don't even know what that was. So that's what our segment is. We've had some people submit their wins, L's, and I don't knows on the Resilience Rising Podcast Facebook page and in the Facebook group. So I'm going to read a few of those to you. One young lady, her win, she says she stepped out of her shadow and publicly announced a new business. It's something she had been putting on hold for a while. So she just went ahead and stepped out on faith and was like, you know what? I'm going to announce, hey guys, this is what I'm doing. This is what I got going on. So kudos to her. We've got another young lady that submitted her win was that she made up with a friend. Wow, that's awesome too. You made up with a friend. I'm sorry to hear that maybe they did have a falling out at some point, but to know that they were able to come back together and talk about it and, start the process of reconciliation, that is a win. I am applauding her for that, and I'm celebrating with her for that. Now, we did have another win, and this other win was that one of the ladies in the group was asked to speak on a telesummit. That's really cool, and that's really awesome when you are, an entrepreneur or you're trying to get your name out there as a speaker, and you don't always, sometimes we have to put ourselves out there and say, do you need a speaker for this particular event? Or I see you have this coming up. I'd like to volunteer my services to lead the group discussion or to be on the panel or whatever the case may be. But it's something, and that's fine. But it's something when someone calls us to say, listen, I thought of you and I'd like for you to be part of this event. I'd like for you to be the motivational speaker. I'd like for you to be the keynote speaker. I'd like for you to sit on this panel. It's really a wonderful feeling. It really is. And I can add a win that I was asked to sit on a panel of mental health clinicians, and I was thrilled and honored to be thought of and asked. So that is, of course, a win, and we celebrate with her for that. We've got another win. I'm telling you, you guys have got to join into the online community and what we're doing. We have some great discussions in the group. Another win is that one lady says she's been setting little weekly goals of things to do to stay on track, and she's been accomplishing them. On top of that, she had to take a test and she passed it. So woot woot and woot woot. Setting short-term goals, setting little benchmarks for yourself. Pat yourself on the back every time you pass a little goal. Don't wait until you make the large goal before you celebrate yourself. Celebrate yourself along the way. And that's what wins, L's, and I don't knows is all about. And we've had a couple more submissions. My win this week was staying strong and positive after being laid off from my job. Woo, that's a huge win. That is a huge win. When you are in the face of bad news or in the face of adversity, or just like, you got one of the worst types of surprises, and you're able to just breathe through it in the moment and, okay, I'm going to be okay, and be able to move into the next step of whatever your next step may be. That is a huge win. That doesn't mean that, it felt good. It doesn't mean that it was an easy pill to swallow, but the fact that you didn't let it overtake you and overwhelm you, that is indeed a win. So large shout out, big kudos to her. And the last win that we have submitted online, and these are wins that have been going on, throughout the weeks that I haven't been recording with you guys. So, like I said, we're playing catch up today. Is this young lady says that her win was being part of a team and seeing the fruits of your labor and the teamwork's labor. I don't know about you guys, but group work for me is kind of difficult if you feel like you're putting in a certain amount of effort and another person may be putting in a certain amount of effort, but yet another person may not be putting in a certain amount of effort, but you're all in this together. So you got to kind of pick up the pieces and trudge forward. It can be daunting at times. It can really like get you down at times and just get you a little frustrated. It can be frustrating and even annoying at times, but to know that in the end, you can see the fruits of your labor and the accomplishment that the team was able to make was really great. And this particular accomplishment that this young lady is talking about is she works for a particular school where different people had to come together. And I don't know where you're listening from. And I don't know about everybody's education system, but in the state of Florida, schools get graded and school systems get graded. And this particular school's grade increased a letter grade, I think at least one letter grade. So that was a big win for the team, for the complete administrative team at that school. And even though it may have had hard times during the year, to know that at the end of it all, we were able to accomplish providing better education to the children, providing a better environment for learning for the children, and we can move forward together as a team, that is indeed a win. So let's just sound off for all those wins. Awesome. Now we're going to get into some of the questionable parts, which are the L's. Remember, the L's can be losses or they could also be lessons. So let's take a look. We had one young lady submit that her L was to put in a certain amount of hours working on a business that she newly announced. Remember the lady that newly announced her business, and she didn't put those hours in. Okay, well, what's funny is she follows it up with her I don't know, is that she does not feel bad or guilty about not putting in those hours. And I submit that she should not feel bad about not putting in the amount of hours that she wants to. Oftentimes we can be our own worst critic. I myself went onto her website to see what she's done, and I am immensely proud of her. She's done a lot of work in a little bit of time. She did a lot of research. She did some, the back end work, the parts that people don't see when they go to your website, the parts that people don't see when they go to your social media page. She had done those things. She had done the legwork. So taking a break sometimes, and maybe you don't spend 8 solid hours on it. Maybe you spend 5, but you can be proud of the work that you did in those 5. Yeah, that's not an L. And don't be questioning about it. You shouldn't feel guilty about it. And I hope she's listening. She shouldn't feel guilty about it at all. I agree with her, because the work that she did, although she may not have put in the hours, the quantity of time, the quality of the work was superb, in my opinion, at least. And I think she's proud herself. So there you go. I think that's awesome. Sometimes it's not always about the quantity of what you do or the time you spend doing it. It's about the quality of the effort that you put in during that time. So quality over quantity, especially in the case of what she's talking about. So I totally agree with her. It's an L as far as, I didn't achieve my goal, but don't feel guilty about you didn't achieve your goal in quantity, but you achieved probably more than you thought you would in quality. So kudos again. Now, the young lady whose win was that she made up with a friend, and we're like, yay for reconciliation. Her L was that she found out the reason that she and this friend had the breakdown. And the reason she and this friend had the breakdown is because a third party, another person, lied to both of them and caused the fallout. I promise I'm going to have an entire episode just on friendships because it seems like it can be awesome, or then it could be a black hole of confusion of, okay, how do we handle this? Are we friends? Are we really not friends? So these two young ladies actually fell apart from friendship because of a lie that was told to each of them by the same person. So now her I don't know is, where do they go from there? Where to go from there? I submitted, as well as some other ladies in the Facebook group, submitted to her that maybe her L wasn't an L. That's not your L. We're giving that L to the person that told the lie. That's her L. That person, that's their L. Shame on them. What's going on in their life that they had to create a scenario to make people fall out with each other just to make her look good or to make her feel good even in that moment. What's going on with her? What was that about? So we got together, we encouraged her, and we did agree that, you know what, that's not your L. Don't make that about you. But as far as the lesson, I'm sorry that it happened, but there was a lesson in it for her and the friend about communication, because they did allow the lie that was told to them, or the story, whatever it was, that was told to each of them, caused them to choose not to communicate with each other, even in the midst of that. So if I'm friends with, I'm just going to say Maria. I'm just making up a name here. If I'm friends with Maria, but Jane, completely making up names here, but Jane tells me something and Jane tells Maria something, and Maria and I decide not to even discuss it, then that's a lesson that Maria and I have now learned moving forward. If Jane tells me something about Maria, but Maria is my friend, I should be able to call Maria and say, listen, we need to talk about this. This is what Jane just told me. Is that accurate? First of all, it hurt me to hear that. Is that even accurate? Maybe Jane had some wrong information. Maybe we both need to go and talk to Jane and the three of us need to sit down and hash it out. I don't know. But the lesson in that is that it possibly could have been handled differently when it actually happened. That's the lesson from this. So it's not an L as far as a loss, like womp womp, look what we did. We let somebody lie to us and tear apart our friendship. No. That's not your L. The person that told the lie and tore apart the friendship, that's their L. But your lesson from this could be in how you and your friend, after reconciliation, decide to communicate moving forward. So that's awesome. It is worth a discussion. She did say that she didn't stop to think, didn't stop to think and realize that their friendship should have been worth a discussion. But you learn. I had that happen within the last couple of years with another friend of mine that was calling other people, telling them things regarding, about me that were not true, that she perceived to be true, off of something she saw on social media, of all places. Something she perceived to be true. Called other people, told them about it. They were thrown off because they were like, that doesn't even sound like Cinnamon. And those people in turn came to me to tell me that my friend was upset with me about something that didn't even happen. And you know what I did? I did not reach out to that friend. Because I was angry. I wasn't angry that she believed something that wasn't true. I wasn't angry that she called everybody else. I was angry because I thought our friendship was at a level where if you had heard something about me that ruffled your feathers, that you could have called me about it. And we could have talked about it and maybe hashed out what may or may not have been true or false about it, and why something, even if it was true, why did that bother you? Maybe I did something unintentionally. Maybe I don't even recognize it. Let's talk about it. But it hurt. I was so hurt and angry that she didn't call me. So we didn't talk for like a year. And when we did talk, it was about something really small and minuscule, but I couldn't let the conversation end without bringing it up because I was like, you know what? We're on the phone now. Let's just talk about it. Yeah, we should have been able to just discuss it when it happened. But you know what? We learn. And that's cool. There are many of us, unfortunately, that refuse to take a step back and say, you know what? We should have been able to talk about that before. Let's see if we can talk about it now. Unfortunately, too many people decide to take the low road and say, well, I'm just never going to speak to them again, with no communication, no closure, no understanding. So I say that that's not an L as far as a negative strike. That is indeed a lesson. So, the young lady that got asked to speak on a telesummit, woo woo, that was her win. Her L though was that she made a pitch to another publication to get she said publication, so I don't know if it was a newspaper article or something of that sort. So I'm just going to roll with maybe a blog or newspaper article or magazine article, but it got rejected. And so her L was that, she got rejected. I know that feeling. I do know that feeling. And I did say that I wanted to cheer for her for even putting that pitch in the first place. That took a certain level of courage, because sometimes when we know the answer could possibly be no, we tend not to want to ask the question because we don't want to hear the no. And if the possibility is no, if I don't ask, I can't be told no. So the fact that she moved past the potential of rejection and submitted anyway, she did get a rejection, but she got a rejection and they provided feedback as to why it was rejected. So she can revamp and resubmit to that publication or even a number of other publications with a better idea of what they may be looking for exactly. That's a win. That's a win. She's got a leg up from somebody who's just submitting blindly. Now she's got a little more insight to what those people at that publication may be looking for. That's really good. That's a good L. That's a good L. That's a lesson. Yes, it may be a loss that, I got rejected, but it's a lesson because they provided the feedback to her. So kudos to the publication, because there are some places that will just say no and won't say why the answer is no. So kudos to the publication for giving feedback. So that's awesome. Thank you for that. But here's a very interesting. Her I don't know was online dating. Okay, that sounded a little bit like a horse. I was supposed to be trying to make like an eerie, scary, weird sound, but it sounded like a horse. So I'm not going to do sound effects with my mouth anymore because that didn't come out right. But anyway, she is looking at the online dating world. Yes, there are a lot of success stories, but it is weird. It is kind of scary to some of us who are 35 and older or 40 and older, or maybe have even been married and are now divorced and looking at online dating, because this is so not what we were groomed for. This is not what we were groomed for. I'm still the type of girl that looks for the mixtape. Yes, I said the mixtape. And no, I'm not talking about a CD. I'm not talking about a playlist. I'm talking about a straight up cassette mixtape that you had to sit in front of your radio and wait for the song to come on the radio and run to the radio and hit record and make sure it recorded, and you tried to stop it at the end of the song before the DJ at the radio station started talking over the end of the song, and then you would make sure all those songs that you recorded from the radio were on one tape and give it to the person that you liked. I ain't say you were getting ready to marry them. You just liked them. I just want you to know that I like you. So I recorded these songs off the radio so that you could go home and play them and think about me, because I hope you like me too. I'm still there. That took an immense amount of effort and dedication to see that thing through to the end. And now all it takes is a heart on an Instagram picture. Yeah, that's very different. Those are two extremely different things. So if I'm someone who likes the mixtape and now I've, been through marriage and now I'm not married anymore and it's years later, and now the thing to do is heart a picture on Instagram and online dating, ooh, it's a little, yeah, I don't know either. If there's anybody out there that has any insight or tips or input, positive or negative, about online dating, please send them to me. Send it to resiliencerisingpodcast@gmail.com. Submit them. I am interested in hearing your online dating scenarios and your online dating stories, be it positive or negative. I have one or two. Obviously, they were both not that great because we're not together. So yeah, her I don't know was online dating. Whoo, yeah, I don't know. So we've got the young lady, we've got a young lady who submitted an L, and she is married, and she said her husband has to be out of work due to an accident, but it could have been a different situation. So maybe that's a win. And I totally agree with her. Totally agree with her. Yeah, the loss may be wages of some sort, but the win is you still got your husband. He's here. You can replace wages. Can't replace your husband. You can't replace a person. You can't replace a human being. So yeah, most definitely. But her I don't know is that people expect a lot from her, but they don't do the minimum just to stay in touch with her. For example, if she says no or that she can't do something or be somewhere, she feels as though she's treated like the worst person ever. But they are used because they're used to the yes person, the person that always makes it happen. But she's got to adjust. Man, making the adjustment, setting and resetting boundaries. Oh my God. Setting and resetting boundaries. I ended up sending to her a previous episode that had been recorded, and I didn't write down which episode that was now, so I don't remember off the top of my head which one that was, but I know we did talk on this episode about setting and resetting boundaries to the people in your life, and the people that it's not okay for you to reset a boundary, especially when you've had a change in your life, like getting married, like switching jobs, like having a child, like your husband being in a car accident and now having to be out of work for a while. You know what? If the wages, if he's gone from a full-time paycheck to maybe a short-term disability check, a short-term disability check is, if I'm not mistaken, approximately 2/3 of your full-time check, but the expenses have not changed. You still got to pay your light bill. You still got to pay your water bill. You still got to pay the car note. You still got to pay the car insurance, etc., etc., etc. So you may have to say no to some things just so you can get by. And the people in your life that love you and are here for you are the people that get that. The people that don't get that, we may need to put another boundary in place for those people. Even when your life goes back to the way it was, because this is a temporary situation, doesn't necessarily mean those people need to go back to the space that you had them in before, or the position that you had them in before. Because now I know that maybe you can't handle when I can't do it. You can handle well when I can do something, when I bend over backwards. But when I'm in a position that I can't do it right now and you can't handle it, then maybe when I can go back to handling it, that I don't put you back in that position of receiving quite so easily. Maybe. So yeah, some things may need to be adjusted. May need to be an adjustment there. Speaking of being without work, because I know she mentioned that her husband was in an accident and now he's off work for a little while. We've got another young lady that submitted that her L after being laid off from her job was that education is important. Man, that was a hard L that I learned years ago. A hard L that I learned years ago. Yes, education is important. And yes, we live in a society today where it's going to continuously be told that, maybe education is important. Maybe it's kind of, you can learn it on YouTube. What employers want to know is that you have drive. They don't really want to know that you have an education. Well, you know what? Entrepreneurism is a way. Yeah, entrepreneurism is the way. But man, let me tell you, this thing is hard. Getting yourself started up and self-sufficient in your business is hard work. It is lots of hours. It is long hours. And it may be a few years before you are self-sustaining. So in the meantime, I might need a job. I might need a decent enough job that I can take care of myself, that I can pay the mortgage or the rent, whatever your situation may be, that I can have a reliable transportation so I can get to and from work or to and from my clients if I'm working a business on the side. For those decent jobs, maybe I have to have an education. So now we're back to education is important. It is. It really, really is. And yeah, so those are the wins, L's, and I don't knows. We're playing catch up for the time that I haven't been covering them, which is approximately a month. The other thing that we haven't been covering in a month are the episodes of Red Table Talk.
Hashtag put it all on the table.
On the red table.
On the red table. We about to red table that.
This segment is brought to you by Black Pride Box, the premier subscription box celebrating the pride and beauty of being Black all year long. They will provide you with products that empower you to embrace the beauty of being Black, display your pride in your culture, and celebrate Black history all year long. Go to blackpridebox.com, that is blackpridebox.com, subscribe, and get notified when they launch. You'll then be able to receive your subscription box once they go on sale. blackpridebox.com. Now I'm going to flow through the episodes of Red Table Talk that we've missed really, really quickly. There's episodes 4 through 8. Yeah, we haven't talked about 5 episodes of Red Table Talk. So let's go back to the first one that we've missed, episode 4, which was about parenting. Man, that was a good episode. Oh my God, that was a good episode. Jada brought in Jaden, because we already know Willow and her mother Adrienne are on the show. It's the 3 of them, but they brought in Jaden and they were talking about parenting. And let me tell you, she had a few nuggets that I wrote down, where she was saying that, you know, you have huge ideas for parenting, meaning you have huge ideas for when you become a parent, what you're going to do. And some of these ideas start when you're a teenager. You know, when I have kids, I'm not going to do what my mom did. Or when I have kids, I'm going to do this. My parents took me to Disney. And when I have kids, I'm going to take them to Disney. You have huge ideas, and your ideas continue to grow and grow and grow. And then you're blessed with this child, or you're blessed with these children. And ta-da! What's in your engine isn't necessarily what's in their engine. This person comes to you with this completely new personality, and it may go completely against or even slightly against these huge ideas that you had set up for what it would look like for you to be a parent. So what do you do? What do you do? Let me tell you, I tell the parents that I work with all the time, I know that there are people out there that write several books. I know there's all kinds of how-tos, but there is no perfect parenting to-do list. There is no perfect parent, and you're not going to know everything to do every time something happens. There's the basic stuff. When they fall down and scrape their knee, you know to clean it, bandage it up. If it's, you know, a broken leg, you know to get them to the emergency room so a doctor can take care of it. There are some things that may be basic that you may know when it arises, you know what to do. Then there are some things that arise that may be like, this is not in my scope of knowledge. I have no idea. This has completely thrown me off. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how to situate this thing. And guess what? That's okay. That's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You really don't. One thing that I do want to say to parents, and I see it more and more, but I still don't think I see it enough in my opinion, don't be afraid to apologize to your children, and don't be afraid to admit if you were wrong about something. There are a lot of parents that don't seem to do that because they feel like I'm the parent, I know all, and I am almighty parent. Well, you might have been wrong about something. You may have done something or made a decision that you thought was the right decision at the time with the information that you had. And that's fine. That's what we all do. We're human. But 5 years, 8 years, 10 years down the line, you may be able to look back in hindsight and say, that probably wasn't the best idea. Don't be afraid to go back and say, listen, I know that I always taught you ABC, but really, I should have said DEF. But I didn't know DEF at the time, so I couldn't say it. So I apologize for teaching you what I thought was right, but is actually wrong. So let's see if maybe we can both learn this different way together, because I don't know it either. If I knew it, I would have taught it to you. I didn't know it. I'm just now being exposed to it. I'm just now learning it. I was wrong. Let's see if we can learn something new and maybe learn it a better way or learn it the right way this go around. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But do know that I loved this. I had to write this down. What's in your engine isn't necessarily what's in your child's engine. What it takes to make you run and function is not necessarily the same thing that your child is going to need so that they can run and function. Two different engines. So that was a pretty good episode that I liked. Episode 5 was about sex. Ooh, let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Okay, but that's what that was about. And what I loved was how they didn't just talk about sex and having sex and what sex is like. They didn't go into that. They talked about what it's like between different generations. What it was like for Adrienne, who's the grandmother, to when she was coming up in her lifetime, what the sex talk was like for her, or what the ideology of sex was for her, versus when Jada was growing up. Now fast forward approximately 20 years. Now life looks a little different. This is a different generation. And what sex looks like in her lifestyle and in her lifetime, and the lessons that she learned about sex that her mother had not learned until she was even older. And now here's Willow, who's 17, who's, entering into the stage where people talk, we talk about our friends, we talk about it, we want to learn about it, we're a little more curious about sex, and things look very different now than they did 30 years ago when Jada was 17. So the difference between generations, and also as a woman or as a girl talking with your mom about sex versus talking with your dad about sex, and man, it's very different. It is very, very different. My mom, as nervous as she may have been, she was willing to try. She was willing to give it a shot. My dad did not want to think about his baby girl out there having sex with any raggedy, ragamuffin, random dude who did not deserve her. He didn't even want to think about it. And I get it. Here I am at 38 years old. I don't want to think about any of my godchildren or my boyfriend's. I don't want to think about some filthy boy putting his hand on you. I don't even want to think about it. But it's a reality. It is a reality that the possibility is there. And so I have to think about it. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's really hard to think about, let alone talk about. So that was a pretty good episode. I like the different angles that they came from. And these are topics that I'm sure we'll discuss and have guest speakers on about moving forward in its own episode. But we're just doing some recap right now. So episode 6 actually really stretched me a little bit. The title of the episode was Daring to Be Different, and they had EJ on the show. EJ Johnson, who is Magic Johnson and Cookie Johnson's son, who practices gender fluidity. He used that term, gender fluidity. And I'm going to be honest, even though I'm a social worker and a therapist, this has been an area that I haven't really delved into to educating myself about it. So my thoughts and feelings about it, I don't really have any, because I can't conclude any thoughts or feelings I have around gender fluidity because I haven't exposed myself to it very much. But just knowing the daring to be different, the daring to step outside and remove any labels that may have been placed on you, the being daring enough to look at your stereotypes in the face, grab them by the neck, choke them, and throw them to the side and do your own thing. That takes another level of courage to embrace your individuality and embrace it in a sense that it's like, I'm not throwing it in everybody's face and making everybody accept it. This is me. This is who I am. This is me. And the last 2 episodes that I'm going to lump together, the 7th and 8th episode. The 7th episode was with Tiffany Haddish, comedian, actress, writer, Tiffany Haddish, and Cesar Millan, who's, yes, the dog whisperer. I used to watch that show all the time. What I noticed in both of them are friends of Jada's, and she had them on the show to talk, but they both came from and came through difficult backgrounds where, Caesar was an immigrant And he did come to the country illegally, and he was talking about the things he risked for the American dream. He is here legally, so don't go looking after him. But the things that he risked so that he can partake in the American dream. And Tiffany Haddish going through foster care, the foster care system, and doing what she had to do to survive. And the reason she got into the foster care system was because, not anything abusive, but because her mother, due to medical reasons, had gotten to a point where she could no longer care for Tiffany and Tiffany's siblings. So they entered the foster care system. So, it wasn't like, oh, Tiffany's mama was out on here on drugs and couldn't take care. No, it wasn't like that. It was a truly sad, unpredictable situation that happens a lot more than people realize. And that's how she ended up in the foster care system. But in the foster care system, I have worked in the foster care system. It's very possible to slip through cracks. It's very possible. It's very easy to be lost in the system, especially the older you get. So to know that she was able to, stay out of any major trouble and tapped into her sense of humor to get her through. And Caesar's thing that really got him through was staying focused. So she, the different things that we use to motivate us to get to our goals, I thought that was a very interesting trend between both episodes. Even though they were different episodes, they still were talking about coming up through, potentially dangerous and tough situations in life, early in life, sticking to the thing that motivated you and how you could use that to create a success for yourself. So that was awesome. So if you haven't been keeping up with Red Table Talk, I suggest going back and watching it. I do love Red Table Talk. I'm glad that it exists among other shows. So there's that. Anybody who wants to have any input on the Red Table Talk episodes or has some feedback, you know what I'm going to say, send it to me. And now let's get ready for Q&A. All right, so our Q&A is what we're going to use to wrap up every episode. I'm going to pick a question that I've gotten online or through the email. This particular question came through the email. I have a couple other questions, but I'm only going to do one for today. And the anonymous question, she asked to remain anonymous. Why do people with children think it's okay to make the following statements after finding out that one does not have children? And the statements are, lucky you can wait, or don't rush. So why do people think it's okay, people with children think it's okay to say that to people without children? So I posed the question online to see what people would say. One person responded and said, that's a good question. I say those words if I know somebody and they were still pretty young and have a life ahead of them. I tell them to leave the children until they've reached their goals. But on the other hand, I think people say that not to scare you, but just to let you know what you're about to get yourself into. So what that person basically is saying is that people who say that may be saying, listen, don't rush, don't make having children is such a big deal that you don't that you lose yourself in it. And sometimes when we have to take care of someone else, we tend to run the risk of losing ourselves in that. And we can't leave our children up to be raised by themselves or anyone else. They're our children, they're our responsibility. So maybe what they're saying is to just tell that out. Just, it's okay, relax, you got time. You still can, don't rush. But again, that's usually from something that would say to someone who's younger. And I'm assuming younger may be early 20s. If somebody who's 22 doesn't have children versus someone who's 32 not having children, will they hear the same responses? I'm not sure. But different women were responding and saying that, your life completely changes after children. And so if you're not ready for your life to change completely, don't rush into that. And basically what these ladies are saying is that the reason they may say it these are women who do have children. The reason they may say it to someone is because they have the experience in knowing that after having children, it's more like a warning. It's like, okay, well, listen, let me warn you. Don't jump out in a year or two just to have kids just because you think your clock is ticking and you're not ready to understand that your life changes completely, totally and completely. So again, that's if they're younger. But I will say this. I don't know how the exact age of the young lady that submitted that anonymous question, but I will say this. As a woman who also does not have children, and I am 38 years old, when somebody says to me, do you have children? And I say no, and they say, lucky you. My response is, I know, right? But lucky you too. Because oftentimes when we are not sitting in another person's seat, we can't see things from their perspective. We can't see things from their perspective. I don't see from a mother's perspective the blessing of having children, but I also don't see from a mother's perspective the struggle that they may go through with the children, the time constraints, the, as someone else said, losing yourself completely. I don't have that in my life, so I don't see that from that perception. Also, the person with children, the mother, may not see from my perspective the lonely times, the times when I was all through my 20s dreaming about the days. Remember earlier in this episode when we read Table Talking that I said you have huge ideas for when you become a parent, and what happens when the day never comes? What happens when that day doesn't show up and you've built yourself in your mind for years of what kind of woman you'd be at age 40. At age 40, you'd be a mother and you'd be doing these things and you'd be doing those things. And when you're 40 and you're not a mother, this is not what I had in mind. So we see things from different perspectives. What I would like to focus on is more so the young lady that submitted the question, the childless woman that submitted the question. It is clear that when someone with a child makes these types of remarks to you, that it triggers a place in you that hurts. I don't know if you have had pregnancies and miscarried. I don't know if you cannot have children. I don't know if you've got some sort of difficulties with conception. I don't know your story. And just for those of you who may be making a response to people like this, please understand you don't know their story either. You don't know why they don't have children. You don't know what came about that has prevented or not afforded them the opportunity to have children. Do know that not everyone can just lay down and have sex and get pregnant. That's not the case for everybody. So please be mindful when these types of conversations come up, that you don't know what the reason is for that person not having children. But for the person that does not have children that may be triggered by some of these responses, I invite you to examine what that trigger is about. What is that? What are you actually hearing? When they say lucky you, what are you really hearing? What they may be saying in lucky you is, I wish I could do it over again. But what you may be hearing in lucky you is, oh, look at you, you can't have kids, but lucky you that your, excuse me for saying it like this, but lucky you that your reproductive system doesn't work right. That's a whole different trigger. If they may be saying, man, I wish I could do it over, but you heard, good for you that your reproduction system doesn't work properly, those are two very different messages. Very, very different messages. And we hear what we hear, we see what we see, we intake what we intake, and we perceive what we perceive based on the things and experiences that have happened in our life. So I don't know what your exact story is, but I invite you to examine why this triggers you so. It used to trigger me. When I found out that I had PCOS back in 2011, when I was diagnosed, when I found out I had PCOS and that becoming pregnant would not be a simple task, that there would be a few other things that would have to go in, I felt defective as a woman. I felt like the reason for my creation, the reason that I'm here on earth, the reason I have been given the chromosome that I've been given to become a woman is to bring forth life. And I now can't do that effectively. I felt defective as a woman. So for me, if somebody said, "You're lucky," I had to filter that through my feelings of defectiveness. But that's not on that person. That person didn't tell me that I'm defective. That was in me. So I invite you to examine what's in you that's allowing this trigger to take hold on you so much that you became irritated or frustrated enough or even hurt, possibly even angry, to write me to ask, why do these people think it's okay to say that? Maybe they don't think it's okay. Maybe they just have no idea what else to say. I've actually had people tell me if I could go back and do it again, I would not have had, either I would not have had children, or I would not have had so many, or I would not have had them so early, or I would not have had them close together. People with children have their own stuff that they walk around with. They have their own stuff that they walk around with. So they may not be thinking about your stuff because they got their own stuff. We can't control what another person sees or even says, but we can figure out what it is that triggers us and how we can cope with that. So that's what I would like to invite you to do. I would like to suggest to you to really find a way to get in there and say, why does that trigger me? Because I'm here to tell you, it's probably not going to stop until you're like 50. And even then, when somebody asks you, if you're 50 and you never had children and someone asks you, do you have kids? And you say no, the shock is going to be there. Somebody's going to say, oh my God, you never had kids? And that trigger may come back up for you. So I invite you to find out why you're so triggered by that and what that's about for you and how you can implement some coping mechanisms to help you through that. Okay? Thanks for joining me today, guys. If you've got more input for the answer to the question that I just asked, or if you've got that just answered, if you've got more questions that you'd like to submit to the podcast, go to resiliencerisingpodcast.com, where you will find all the links to all my social media, how to email me, how to find the Facebook group and join it, etc., and so on. I missed you guys, but I'm going to stop talking now, and I will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Resilience Rising with Naturally Cinnamon. Life has a way of tossing unexpected trials and circumstances our way. We can't stop them, but we can better handle them by raising our resilience. Remember, you can find us at resiliencerisingpodcast.com, on Instagram at Resilience Rising Podcast, and you can also send in a question or topic for this podcast by emailing us at resiliencerisingpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to like this podcast, love it, share it, rate it, and comment, but most important, make sure that you've subscribed and that you're following. I'm Naturally Cinnamon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Creative Director Jeremy Key for J Key Collective. Music by AJ Miles.